We'll be looking at the implications of all of this. You know, we're getting towards the end of the country. Normally, sometimes...
The end of the year.
The end of the year, sorry. End of the year, exactly. So the end of the year, more spendings because of Christmas and all of that. And then we have elections. Campaigns are in full swing and monies will be flowing like river. All right.
Do you want to swim in that river?
Like you want to swim in the river?
Yes, indeed. Well, joining us to discuss the issue of political campaigns and the pressure on Forex market is a business consultant, Vivian Ani. So good to have you on the show this morning.
Thank
you.
Good morning.
We also have an international lawyer and politician, Femi Aino, in the studio. Good morning.
Yes,
good morning,
Thanks
Femi.
for joining
Nice
us.
to see you.
Thank you.
I'm so glad that we emphasize the fact that you're a politician too, so you'll be directly affected by this. You know, but maybe we should, ordinarily, we should start with the lady.
Yes.
Would you permit me to start with the gentleman?
Please go ahead.
Okay, because, I mean, you are directly involved in this. Political campaigns. I know, based on some information, based on some discussions we had in the past, how, you know, you tried to make some foray into politics, only for you to find out that it costs some, really, to even dream of going into politics because of some of the personal experiences that you had. You know. Yes.
Yes, I agree with you, because the politics we play in Nigeria, you know, the political system is so monetized, and even surprisingly, the Electoral Act even recognized that if you want to contest as a governor, you must spend X amount of money. If you want to contest as president, you must spend X amount of money. And I think I've said this before, and I must repeat it for the sake of emphasis. The sort of politics we play in Nigeria is what you call extortionate politics, whereby everybody is there to see what they can get. And some of the political gladiators, including myself, you realize that as you go along, it's the money that speaks, and the people, they don't even want to listen to your policies or what you have to offer. The only time they are ready to listen to you and pay adequate attention is the moment they see you dipping your hand in your pocket to bring out that envelope. And if you don't give that money, there's a possibility you may not even get to where you are going. And this thing is very costly. Apart from the monetary aspect, it can even cost you your health. How many of the political leaders are even in good health if you look at them all around, because of the pressure? And the other thing is this: even when I was in it, the strategy was that Monday I will sit in the office and work. By Tuesday I go on the political feed. Wednesday I go and work again. Then Thursday I go on. But you just realize by the time you sit on Tuesday, they are calling you, there's a meeting here, there's a meeting there. And when you go to all these meetings, you are not going to live there and they will say, okay, we are contributing X amount of money for you to realize your objective. No, they are looking at what you can give. And the problem we have in Nigeria is that there is this belief that if you go there, you are not going to come back and render account. So what happened is this: let's take a bit of him now, before he
now
gets
that we
there.
can see him.
And that causes all sorts of issues.
All right, Vivian, let me come to you on this. From some of the primary elections, it was clear that even the Nigerian naira was no longer adequate, where foreign currency had to be used from the reports we got.
Yeah.
Now, how bad is the situation whereby in political campaigns, foreign exchange is what is used now in some cases?
Okay, good. You know, this foreign exchange thing, think of it. Imagine, I think 365 naira to $1 now, about average. Try carrying 365,000 naira and try carrying $1,000. It's portable, dollar is portable, and it conveys, you know, value. You know, so it's the whole, I think it's I'm not meaning, I don't want to sound as if I'm pessimistic about Nigerian politics, but the truth of it is that the influence of money has built up consistently over time in Nigerian politics. However, the influence of money is not just in Nigeria. If at times when I'm reading articles about the presidential elections in the about the elections in the US, I almost could just change US and put Nigeria, the influence of money. Perhaps the difference is that they have created structures which recognizes the influence of money and they attempt to control it. we've all read about, we've all been reading about all the things that happened at the last elections between the Trump campaign, between Hillary and stuff like that. So presidential elections, unfortunately,
cost money.
Cost money. You can't compare that to when they have parliamentary elections in England. We don't hear all this. Isn't that so? Because you know, it's not you don't directly vote a president. Prime Minister in England. What you do is that you vote a certain party into power, and then the party now picks the leader who now emerges as Prime Minister. So every Prime Minister was once just a minister who sits at the bench. In fact, we've seen people lose their Prime Ministership and decided to stay on
just
and become just ordinary. So I think it's a drawback of the presidential system. When we came up with the the Constitution that heralded the Second Coming, even before, we've always liked the presidential system thing. It is subject to so much abuse. And now you think of a country that's as structured and as developed as the US, that has practiced hundreds of years of democracy, and then you think of Nigeria, that, you know, it be jaga and stuff. So you can imagine whatever happens in the US now gets multiplied by 100 in terms of influence of money. So FX was just the natural progression. You know, it's portable. It conveys value. You know, the dollar, 63% of the world reserves are in dollars. So everyone knows that once you give them $1,000, the stability is likely to remain, unlike the inflation trend when you give them Naira.
Let me remain with you. Now, what are the implications if this trend continues? Because the Naira is taking a nosedive now, and it's been linked to the political season. And of course, our Forex reserves have been, you know, depleting you know, steadily for months now. What are the implications for the economy and going forward?
You know, let me say something. Yes. If you look at the figures, the numbers, if we want to be very simplistic about elections vis-a-vis exchange rates, you could say elections fuel capital flight and it impacts on the exchange rates. However, when you look at the data, it tells a bit of a different story. Don't forget, yes, if you look at the data itself and you compare across elections, I think we've had about 5 elections since 1999 in Nigeria, and dollars have continued to depreciate in every of those elections except for one, 2007, that brought in Umaru Yar'Adua. That was the only one that the Naira actually appreciated. So this whole theory that Naira must depreciate because it is an election year might not be that simple. And I say to you, don't forget too that the Forex rate in Nigeria is also subject to certain headwinds over which we have absolutely no control. The Federal Reserve rate in the United States and the other developed economies, and you know, is projected to rise, you know, over a period of time. So each time you look at the exchange rate just before elections and the few months after elections, you cannot look at it in isolation without thinking about what is going on too globally. Don't forget that a lot of investments in Nigeria, foreign investments, is because hedge funds in the US that control incredible amounts of money are looking for somewhere to get very high returns of money. For a very long time, the Federal Reserve rate remained sort of flat, and it was less than 1%. You know, but right now there's a trend because the U.S. economy is getting stronger, and they're trying to curb on inflationary pressures too. So there's a trend that it might go higher. And you know what the foreign investor is looking at when they come into Nigeria is that Nigeria is a Wahala country. However, if you get it right, the returns are incredible. So it's high risk, high returns. However, when they believe that in their own countries or countries where they feel a lot more comfortable, you know, let's be honest, the American system and, you know, the G8 is a lot more transparent than our own system is, and it's not as, you know, volatile as. So once they see that, look, the conditions too in their own country vis-a-vis exchange rates, Federal Reserve, upon which every other exchange rate is pegged, are going to get a lot better, they will now start to revisit their investments in emerging economies like Nigeria.
All right, Femi, let me come to you on this. The point there is, you were giving us a scenario in the Nigerian political space earlier on. Now, when the politics in Nigeria is highly monetized, like you say, and people are expecting always to get, to collect, to receive, and all of that, is it peculiar to Nigeria?
Well, I don't know whether, because I think we talk about parliamentary system, presidential system. But have we not tried a parliamentary system of government in Nigeria when Tafawa Balewa was the prime minister of the country as at that time? But was the system so monetized as at that time? That is the question we need to ask. You see, all these things boils down to what is going on, whereby the electorates, They are out there, they are after money, they are after what they can get. It's a manifestation of the level of depravity that is going on in the country. Because where people have been to school, they can't get employment, the cost of living is very high. By the time you put all these things in the round, what you will discover is that people will now start playing what you call money politics. And in the long run, that can easily have an effect on the Forex market, as stipulated by co-discussant. And the difficulty which you have in Nigeria is this. Now, people are saying it's just because of the politics, that's why the Naira has depreciated. Yeah. No, that is an isolated view of the situation. Okay. What of the year-on-year spending, which you just mentioned? What about apprehension as to what is likely to happen in 2019.
With investors moving out.
Yes. And what have you. And what the CBN is doing, which is, I think if you look at it between January and October, from the reserve, they've put about $10.97 billion into the Forex market. And it is the Forex market that determines the exchange rate. And the difficulty we have is this. Why do people need this money? The central bank is there to safeguard the Naira against all foreign currencies. And why do you need the foreign currencies? Either to pay your tuition, school fees, or BTA, or medical expenses, and also political campaign. And now, what the government needs to do is to make sure the liquidity is in the market, number one, to ensure the dollar is there and everybody can buy this foreign exchange. And this bureau de change operator, which you mentioned about before, I think it used to be 40,000 per bureau. They've increased that to 60,000. And in the political system, the bureau de change operator are even selling to the politicians. And that is what happened during the PDP primary, whereby dollar was just everywhere. And now, so what we need to do, I think it is very important for government, either INEC, and I think I listened to your clip where the EFCC chairman said, look, we will be monitoring what is going on, and some of you will be our guests if care is not taken. So the government needs to keep, all these agencies needs to keep their eye on the ball, because if you are not careful, if the market is flooded unnecessarily and the Naira depreciates, what you will get in the long run is that you will have people having a lot of money in their hand, but they can't buy any quality goods. Yes. And that is an issue which I'm very concerned about.
Very likely.
All right, we'll come back to you on this. Let's just tell the people about a few things. Money bags and the cash they have to spread around might yet again play a prominent role in determining which candidate emerges victory at the 2019 polls.
Yes, as a matter of fact, in 2015, INEC estimated that political parties spent nearly 196 billion naira to contest various offices, now making the 2015 elections the most expensive in the country's history. Despite the provision of the nation's Electoral Act that pegs budget for presidential election campaign at 1 billion naira for political parties, the APC and the PDP were indicted for overshooting the 1 billion naira ceiling for presidential election campaigns. Now, the two parties, according to a report released by a civil society group, the Center for Social Justice, with support from U.S. Agency for International Development, cumulatively spent as much as 11 billion naira for the 2015 presidential poll campaign.
Yeah, that's a lot of money. But according to the CJS, the PDP spent about 8.7 billion naira, while the APC expended about 3 billion naira for the 2015 presidential election. Now, further breakdown by the civil society group showed that the APC spent 671.1 million naira on outdoor campaigns and rallies. It spent 190 million naira on billboard adverts and 410 million naira for electronic media campaigns. Wow. The APC also spent 1.6 billion or 1.06 billion naira for electronic media advertisement and 579 million naira for print media campaign, bringing the total sum the party spent on political campaigns to 3 billion naira. This is a lot of money.
From an individual point of view, it really is a lot of money. But I wonder if really the issue or our concern should be the amount that is spent on political campaigns and the electoral process in general? Or should we be more concerned about, number one, where these funds come from, and number two, how the funds are actually raised? Or do they mean even the same thing? I mean, in the case of Donald Trump, for example, that you mentioned earlier, there's a process already. As soon as he became president, he started the process of raising funds. Right now,
for the next election.
For the next election. We hear that he's raised about 100 million and still counting as at October. Now, this is, I mean, it's close to December. You can imagine how much, you know, would have been added to that. Really, what should be our concern? Because the opposition party, for example, would say that, well, the governing party has the public till to dip its hands into. In fact, there have been allegations that, you know, the NNPC, you know, has been involved in funding the campaign of the governing, you know, the government right now. So really, what should we be concerned about, and how can we begin to check those areas? Okay, fine.
Like I said, it's difficult to do, you know, as much as every country tries to regulate campaign spending to a certain level. However, there are loopholes too. Even when you read about presidential system that we are imitating, there are also loopholes. And at times people will say, oh, it wasn't really a campaign donation, it was this and that. You see trade by barter, you see all sorts of funny things. Personally, I would be more concerned about where the money is coming from. Unfortunately, like I said, our presidential system has not developed to the point where corporate bodies would happily and willingly give. And individuals, even like us, would give to candidates who are saying the things that we like.
We believe
you know,
yeah.
you know, because in Nigeria there's the suspicion they're all the same. You know, they're all just waiting to get there and do this, their funny stuff that they usually do anyway. So why would I take my hard-earned money? However, in 2015, for the first time, we saw an uptick in individual contributions because it was an election like no other. It wasn't a normal election. You had a party that had been in power for 16 years, and then you had a challenger. And for the first time, they were giving them a big run for their money, and people took sides. And those people that took sides, the people who supported the challenger believed that the least they could do was to give them their personal funds. So we should be very concerned where it's coming from. You don't, whenever I read, even government officials get very overly involved in politics, I say to myself, well, it's a sign of the lack of development too in our own political systems. However, if what we're trying to do now, where you, for the first time in the history of Nigeria, after the First Republic, you have two parties who are competing head to head, who actually, you know, this election could swing anyway. This is the first time this kind of thing is playing out after 2015. Yes. What's going to happen is that politicians themselves are going to get a lot more careful. They're going to get a lot more careful because they know that there's nothing like lifetime appointments anymore.
There are no
politics. There are no guarantees. So what the beauty of that is that they're going to start to, you know, want to woo us, we that were the electorate, and they're going to start putting things in right. And as they woo us, we ourselves, we have the incentive to be able to give them our own personal funds, knowing that truly that they will make a difference. So, like I said, I'm very concerned about where the monies are coming from. Parastatals donating money, putting a lot of pressure on government finances. I saw a headline the other day saying, these are allegations, by the way.
Yes,
I saw a headline saying that MDAs are broke. They're broke. They can't even, you know, take care of the most minimal expenses. And don't forget that this is the age of TSA. So a lot of money has been centralized with the CBN.
So they don't have their accounts anymore.
It's very worrisome.
Okay, Femi, let me bring you in on this.
Yeah. You want to say something about
Sorry, I just want to portray her point.
Yeah.
Okay.
You see, I would be so concerned about where this money comes from. And another thing, how do political parties raise funds? Number one, you raise it either through your members, because you give them membership cards, or nomination forms, or you organize a political dinner, and then. But what you have is that some of the major contractors, too, they can make donations. But what you have is that where you have a situation that happened in 2015, where we now realize that money meant for security are just being given to some political stalwarts, so that they can manipulate the election one way or the other. And now that has come from this Dasuki fund. You have all the noise. But my major concern is that the security agencies, if some group of people comes together and said that we're going to obtain a nomination form for 14 million for me to be president of Nigeria, I think it is high time the EFCC look at all these individuals that where did you get that 14 million from? Unless we do that, we're going to have a lot of problem. And what we have, if you look at the spending which you have mentioned, maybe on the flip side, it's good for the economy, the money is moving, you know, people are printing posters here and there, the printing industry, they are making a lot of money. But at the same time, we have to be very careful that dirty money doesn't get into the economy through political campaign. And that is an issue we need to keep our eye on the ball and look
All right. Yeah, Femi, let me stay with you on this. The point there is there are specifications as regards how much money a presidential candidate should spend and so on. Is it in the place of INEC really to determine how or what amount should be spent, or it is the process itself that should determine how the money should be spent?
Yeah, you see, you have to be very careful, because if you leave it to the process and there is no umpire, you know, there is nothing.
But the point there is, even with these specifications, no president spent just 1 billion naira.
I take your point, but take my point too. That's why do we have INEC? INEC is there to regulate the way we conduct elections and make sure that, you know, dirty money doesn't, people don't seize the opportunity because of political campaigns and bring dirty money or stolen fund here and there and use it. Because if you look at some of these money launderers, this is a good opportunity for them to say, look, I'm making donation to this party, I am doing this, it is people who donated the money. And what is the convenient excuse when some of them get arrested? They said, I make my money legitimately, I took a loan. Whereas by the time you go further, you realize some of them are just speaking through their teeth. But the INEC, the onus is on INEC to make sure that the process you mentioned is not necessarily monetized. You see, and
yeah, but the law already empowers INEC to follow the money. But then again, the question is does INEC even have what it takes to follow the money and punish?
Well, I do agree with you, but that would be a matter for those who appoint people in position of authority. Because, you see, we have to be very careful. If we don't do something and people start voting for money, care must be taken. By the time the armed robbers come with money, they will vote for him and they will get to position. And all of us are going to suffer for it. Because what people are looking at is they are looking at the money, they are not looking at the individual. This, you see, politics is about people who are ready to serve. It is not people who are ready to get into power and make as much money as possible. That is why INEC is there to make sure, and at the end of the political whatever, they can even raise questions, or they can ask you, can you submit your account? If we have an issue, you could be indicted because, you know, you've taken dirty money from one individual. And also before you even allow people to donate to your political party, what is likely to happen is that you must do your due diligence and make sure that this is a legitimate money. And let me even give you the benefit of hindsight. You remember some years ago, somebody in this country organized a dinner trying to raise money for Obama campaign. And that caused all sort of uproar. Until some people said, no, return the money. And the Americans said, look, we don't even take foreign donation. Why are you organizing dinner? And people attended that dinner and donated a substantial amount of money. You see, until EFCC stepped in and they said, you must return that money. And they started, you know, and most of the donors, when you look back, they are banks, they are financial institutions. So something is wrong with our system.
So Vivian, I mean, you have the last take before we, you know, leave this issue now. In the midst of all of this, there's capital outflow going on because investors seem not to be too sure about, you know, what's going to happen in the next, you know, few months as we get into the elections. And then, are there chances that vote buying will still be a major issue come 2019?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. A big issue. Because just as there are outflows, there are also inflows. You know.
Yes.
The foreigners are running out, like I said, because of more favorable conditions looming in their own home countries. However, the politicians too, a lot of that money, or some of that money, was not necessarily bought from the FX market now. It's monies that they have abroad that they're bringing in. So inflows and outflows, and that's why, you know, people look forward to election time. So people who are professionals in this election thing, you know, so for we know that vote buying is going to continue. The economy is bad, you know, it's really, really bad. Honorably, it's more difficult. It's easier to induce a hungry man than it is to induce somebody who is very well fed.
Yeah.
So it will.
All right, one way or the other, as the Forex generally, someone would say that it is, on the other side, it's good to have Forex liquidity in the market here and there, but it's okay. We'll leave it for next time. Vivian Ani, thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank you so much.
And Femi Aino, thank you very much for coming as well.
Thanks.
Thank you. Right.